The Kids Helping Kids will wrap the gift.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from all of us here at WOCA The Source.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. So yesterday I was invited to Robin's church so that I could eat. They had a dinner over there.
Yeah.
And it was free, but I had to bring a non-perishable food item. I always love that.
You brought a whole bag full.
I brought a whole bag full, but I also brought 2 Pez dispensers. Now, why am I talking about Pez dispensers before I talk to Bill Higgs? Here's why. Because Bill Higgs is on the phone. He's written, he's got a blog, called Culture Code Champions. That's also a book. Am I right? There's a book?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
That's the book.
So in the material that was sent to us, I was reading the material, and I thought to myself, what about what he says made the Pez dispenser so popular? I don't know that I can tell you exactly, but I know that as a kid, I loved Pez dispensers. So whoever came up with this idea somehow connected to me. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And you think about that. Almost everything you buy somehow connects with you. Mm-hmm. Out of necessity, or in the case of a Pez dispenser, nobody needs a Pez dispenser, right?
Oh, that's right.
So out of a want. I just wanted that Santa Claus that pushes his head back.
Wow.
You push Santa's head back and he gives you a candy.
Yeah.
Now there's an idea. Bill Higgs is an authority on corporate culture. He's a distinguished 1974 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. He launched the iTunes new and noteworthy Culture Code Champions podcast, and that's also the title of his book, Culture Code Champions, 7 Steps to Scale and Succeed in Your Business. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll start with the Pez dispenser. Bill Higgs, it's an honor to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you, Larry and Robin. It's great to be here.
Yeah, that's an amazing invention that made somebody a lot of money, isn't it? That little plastic candy dispenser.
It is, and one of the things it does is it creates a habit. You want to keep tipping that head back because every time you do, you get a reward.
Isn't that funny? And is that, does that sort of, I mean, I'm sure that Pez came out before you had your ideas, but it's the same idea, isn't it? That you come up with something that will connect to the people.
Well, that's what you want to do. It's like when we started our company, the oil patch was in a big downturn. If you finished a job, you were let go and you're off to the house. So there was no loyalty. And what we wanted to do was create a people-first culture that would then suck people in tight. And to do that, we had to have about 7 Pez dispensers in order to create a culture that people could start to believe in and throw themselves into, to where they'd say, hey, this company's different. They're going to take care of me. If I put myself in, it's going to come back. And the key thing from a Pez standpoint was the company I was at before we started, I was on the softball team, and I destroyed my company hat going into home plate one time. Ooh. And I could not get another hat out of this company. And then I watched a client walk in and walk out with a box full of hats under their arm. And I said, man, if I ever have a company, I'm giving hats to my people.
Oh, wow.
And if you think about it, what we started doing was giving goodies, spiff or swag, whatever you call it, to our people. Like at skating parties, there would be toys that would go in the toy box at home. There would be things that would just show up on people's desks. When they came to the company, they got a goodie bag. Mm-hmm. And subliminally, these people know that they never get that stuff. So the company is treating them as good as a client. And imagine when you start to get put in the hearts and the minds of your people, and it's just that Pez dispensers, like they didn't know when it was going to come next time. Then all of a sudden, something's on their desk, and they're going, hey, my boss was thinking about me.
But your people-oriented philosophy that you're explaining to us must go both ways. It must go to the people who work for you as well as to the people who are your clients. Am I right?
Absolutely. And what's even more important, it's easy to think about taking care of a client, but do you think about taking care of your suppliers? And in our case, some construction contractors. What I tried to change our people's philosophy to was, there's a huge company called Brown and Root. It has engineering, but it also has big fabrication yards. And when we would have a project for Exxon over at Brown and Root's fabrication yard, the sign I would hold up in front of the team was that we wanted to make Brown and Root a hero. We wanted to make them look so good on that project that they would want to work with us instead of their own engineering firm. But imagine if that contractor is talking good about you, all the clients in the industry are going through that fabrication yard to see what they're doing.
Right.
And they're talking good about your firm without you even being there.
No, that's very brilliant. That's absolutely insightful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's hopefully new businesses are listening to what you have to say. So does the book represent the podcast, or is it two separate things?
No, they're very similar. The problem with culture is that it's this, everybody thinks of it as a fuzzy, warm, hold hands and hum, sing kumbaya around the fire type of thing. And what I wanted to do was debunk that. In my career, I saw where everybody thought sales was that way, but then we used the Miller-Hyman sales process, and we were able to get the communication better. I want to do the same thing with culture and show that, no, there's specific steps and habits that you can create that need to become part of the fabric of your team or your organization, and you can intentionally create the culture that you want. But my experience is the Mustang experience and people who have gone on from Mustang and taken those steps with them. What I do on the podcast is I get some just top-flight, world-class folks who have studied this and worked on it for years, and they lead credence to one or two of the steps, and we dig into them a little bit deeper. Because everybody can hear this step, they've got to figure out how to do that step in their team or their organization. So they have to really understand it from 4 or 5 directions, and then they can say, okay, I know how to do this. I'll do it a little bit different, but I know what the objective is in this habit. So then they can go start doing that piece. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hoping eventually is they're sending me videos and they're sending me emails of how they implemented. And then on that podcast, we'll get them on there and we'll cross-fertilize that domestically and internationally. There's a lot of interest internationally in this American just do it type of culture.
But you are a huge advocate for communication. As you were expressing to us off the air, you work with a great team because they communicate well within their own organization. And this is one of the key steps you point out.
Yeah, to me, all problems are communication problems. I used to have my people write that on the back of their hand because it would last 2 days. And when you hit a problem, it's like if you go back to the root cause, it'll have been a miscommunication. So we worked the handoffs. There's hundreds of handoffs every day, and we work both sides of every handoff from a communication standpoint to streamline the handoffs. And we did a big thing I call busting silos in the organization. So like engineering's a silo, purchasing's a silo, construction's a silo. And I'll give you an example. Engineer has a really tough pump application, so they write this impossible specification, and they throw it over the wall to purchasing, who goes out to bid for it. Purchasing goes out to bid, gets junked back in for the bids, but they talk to the suppliers. And they come back to engineering and say, man, you know this pump you specified, they're telling us that it's made out of unobtainium. It's like this new product on the periodic table, a new element called unobtainium.
Oh, wow.
And I actually made a periodic table and put unobtainium on it to break the walls down. It's like, come on, engineer. Go, you know this pump's impossible.
Wow.
Go sit with purchasing, sit with suppliers, figure it out. Because in every organization, people create unobtainium, and it's where they start with a blank sheet of paper, whether you're in a law office or you're in another organization that doesn't have a repeatable process. You're going to create unobtainium, and it's just a waste of time because you have to go rework it. Our whole focus was to get it right the first time, and we would be 30% better than our competitors. So then that sets sales up. Yeah.
Did your West Point experience help you in the corporate world, or are they two separate entities?
Oh, no. It's really interesting. I almost went to the Naval Academy. That's where I applied. And I found out I was colorblind, and they said, you can't go to Navy or Air Force, but you can go to the Army and be cannon fodder.
Oh.
So I ended up going to West Point. But the thing about West Point is it's all about people, because you've got your troops. And people in the civilian world don't understand it, but the leadership in the Army is all about supporting the troops and setting them up to be heroes. And I really learned this making heroes of everybody you touch at West Point. We had a phrase, it was called cooperate and graduate, because those first 2 months, they call it Beast Barracks. And it's like everybody that comes in there is a total stud muffin or awesome men and women coming out of high school. They're like, they've lettered in 3 sports. They're National Honor Society. They're like water walkers. Mm-hmm. And then within 2 weeks of being in Beast Barracks, you really believe that you cannot tie your shoe unless a classmate is helping you.
Wow.
So they totally weld you into a team and tear you down to where it's like the tightest fraternity you'll ever have. By the time you graduate as a senior, you feel like you should be a corps commander. You should be a 2-star general. But then you go into the second lieutenant and you're nothing again, and you have to build yourself back up. But a lot of what I learned about making heroes, taking care of people, that was West Point, and West Point set the cadre up to then take that into the Army. I had my 5 years in the Army. When I got out in the civilian world, everybody worked 8 hours and then they went home, and there was no camaraderie. There was no people taking care of each other. So when we started our company, I said, man, I'm going to try this, try these things that have worked in the military, like in special ops. They don't wear insignia. It's best player plays. And so that's the way we set our company up.
So,
and like a new hire would come in, they try to figure out, you always try to figure out the pecking order. Who's on top, who's what, where are the lines of communication?
Really? Gosh.
So
and they'd see me working as a project engineer underneath a project manager, and I was a founder of this company that went to $1 billion. And they go, okay, well, we don't know what the org chart is. And I go, yeah, I win.
Oh, my gosh. So you're like a secret shopper? Is that what you did?
Yeah, sort of.
You were
like
undercover?
That. It's like, who's really in charge around here?
So do you think you could walk into a business and like get a feel for the vibe almost immediately and decide if their culture needs a little bit of a boost?
Oh, you can tell. For us, you knew we were different when you drove into our parking garage. We had full-size cowboy cutouts saying, slow down there, partner. And you drive in the parking garage, you go, this place is going to be different. And when you went into reception, the receptionist was, just bubbly and take care of them. There was stuff on the walls about all the awards we'd won and things. And you could feel it. And when you walk down the hallways, everybody's happy. They're smiling. You can tell there's something different in this organization. And so I teach Vistage classes, and they end up being at different companies. And there's some companies I walk in and I'm going, man, I'm not teaching this person anything about culture because it feels just like our company did.
Oh, my.
But I'll never forget one of those companies. and the CEO is in the class. And I'm thinking, I'm not teaching this guy anything. 2 days later, because I was teaching 3 days in a row, I'm teaching the class, and his head of HR is in there, and I saw the same company on her name tag, and I said, hey, I just was at your company 2 days ago. She says, oh, yeah, I know. The CEO came in during one of your breaks and said, you know that monthly newsletter that we do? We're going to start mailing it to the house as hard copy communication. And so I didn't think I could teach this guy anything, but that's how you have toys in a toy box. You send the newsletter home. Now you're getting the spouse reading and understanding how good this company is, and they're seeing pictures of their kids and stuff. And that's when you start really pulling people in tight to where they don't leave. And that's where it goes right to the bottom line. Our bottom line was 4 times the industry average percentage-wise, because people just didn't leave. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, you can tell. You can tell when you walk in a company, no doubt.
That is very brilliant. I love the fact that you described it that way. I wonder how many managers might be listening to this interview or reading your book or listening to your podcast and get it. Like they say, this is what's wrong with my business. And so is that part of what you do in the book and in your podcast? Do you tell like little tricks or little hacks on how to get something changed in a bad culture?
Absolutely. The 15,000 Mustangers, they all call them Higgsisms, because I would boil things down to a 2 or 3 word phrase. Mm-hmm. And those phrases, there's a lot behind them, and you learn it across time. But our people, top to bottom, could recite our vision statement, could talk these Higgsisms. And so when new people came in, they were hearing it from their peers, from their bosses, from the people that worked for them. And the culture just kept rejuvenating itself. So I essentially went out of day-to-day operations in 2006. And in 2016, we had offices around the world. They went to 12 offices around the world, and we called ourselves Mustangers. That's one of my things. You need to have a name for yourselves. Figure it out.
I love it.
We have a mascot, the blue horse that people would get in and come to activities and things. But in 2016, they went around and asked people, what does it mean to be a Mustanger? In their own language, they would say. And the subscripts in English were the same words that we were putting out 25 years earlier. Really? And I've been gone for 10 years, and just it brought tears to my eyes. That culture, it went international. The people loved it. They were doing the same thing.
And what do you think about employees socializing after work hours with each other?
I think it's really important. So we did lots of activities at work and outside of work, and I called it free space. So we provided free space where people could bump into each other from different departments or HR or management, whatever. A number of the things that we did outside of work were for charities, so as part of our Give Back program. But whenever we set anything up, we would use call it like a cross-functional team. So you'd have top people, we called our new employees out of college and high school Young Guns. So we had a Young Guns training program that developed people across time. But we'd have Young Guns involved, some older mentors, people from various groups organized those. And I'll remember one secretary, a personal assistant, she was instrumental in one of the outside activities, Toys for Tots. And people saw how organized and disciplined and how she could make things happen. So she had leadership characteristics. And they started looking at her differently and giving her some small leadership jobs in the company. And she moved from being a personal assistant and moved into procurement, purchasing, and almost doubled her pay, like in a year and a half. It was crazy. But so those activities brought people together, but you also could see other people's skills that you might not see during the day at work.
And that's pretty important, because you've got to really know who has your back and who is in it for them, only themselves.
And you had to realize that these are really good people in every one of these places. And so you want to help make them a hero. Whenever you're touching them or providing some information, you want to make sure that you've communicated and you can get it right the first time to make them look good.
And it's pretty amazing how your beliefs, how you're able to get other people to listen to you to incorporate those beliefs as their own. Because sometimes people have their own way and then they don't listen to anybody else. They think their way is the best way.
Absolutely. And so there's 100 engineering firms in Houston. So essentially, if you've got good people, they're all volunteers, because all of our people could go to work the next day. Mm-hmm. So you got to treat them like they're volunteers, and you've got to be winning them to you all the time. But what we found is, like, no matter how good you're bringing people in, it's a bell-shaped curve, and you've got a fat middle, and you got some people who aren't quite performing, and you got a lot of some super performers, but it's a bell-shaped curve. And all our culture did was shift that performance curve a little bit to the right. And that delta was a culture delta that other companies, if they didn't really believe it, they couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And so that set us and differentiated us apart to where we became the offshore engineering firm worldwide. When everything moved into deep water in 3,000 to 5,000 foot of water, we were on the cutting edge.
Oh, my God.
And we were it worldwide because no one could touch our performance.
Bill, thank you for taking time to talk to us today. The book is called Culture Code Champions. I went to the website culturecodechampions.podcast.com. Is there a different website you'd like to direct us to?
That one's good, culturecodechampions.podcast.com, or just culturecodechampions.com will work.
All right, excellent. Bill, that was very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I enjoyed the heck out of talking with you.
All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be right back.